Audrey Meadows remained silent for 30 years. In interviews, she grinned. She formally thanked Jackie Gleason. She safeguarded the Honeymooners' enchantment. She did, however, finally expose Gleason in 1994, 2 years before she passed away. An individual who refused to practice was the source of the laughter. He caused everyone to be cautious around his moods and who went silent for days. The most adored pair on television had a harsher reality than anyone had anticipated. Audrey Meadows was born on February 8, 1922, in Wuchang, China, a long way from Hollywood. American missionaries were her parents. When Audrey, the youngest of 4 children, came, they had already been in China for more than 10 years. The echoes of revolution, political turmoil, and a culture entirely distinct from anything found in America surrounded their home. During the 1911 revolution that overthrew the Qing Empire, Wuchang was a hotspot, and the area remained turbulent throughout the 1920s. Audrey's first memories were formed there. She spent the first 5 years of her life speaking no English, playing with Chinese kids and listening to Chinese music. In 1927, she went back to the United States. Her father became a cathedral rector in Rhode Island, where the family made their home. All of a sudden, a little girl in a chilly New England city found herself unable to communicate in the language of her surroundings. She had to start from scratch when learning English. However, her first language remained intact. Audrey knew Mandarin Chinese very well. It changed her perspective on the world and made her more aware than most Americans. The capacity for adaptation turned into a habit in her life. Home, however, was never easy. Jane Meadows, Audrey's older sister, had already started to make a name for herself in the entertainment industry. She was the dramatic actress, the up-and-coming Hollywood star, the exquisite one. After signing with MGM in 1944, she soon found herself performing with legendary actors. Audrey began with music. She has her own fire and could sing like a bird. However, she was a shadow of Jane. The analogies hurt. The rivalry was observed. The sisters didn't always communicate, particularly when Audrey wed airline CEO Robert Six. That did not sit well with Jane. Their bond grew softer over time. They re-established their relationship after Six's passing in 1986. Their friendship was too strong for fame to break. Audrey's voice was the first thing that made her famous. She sang as a coloratura soprano at Carnegie Hall when she was just 16 years old. Audrey held her own on the stage reserved for legends. She subsequently joined opera companies in Chicago, Detroit, and Louisville, where she played the lead in musicals such as Anything Goes and Roberta. However, it was Jane, her sister, who encouraged her to pursue acting. Unlike other people, Jane recognized something in Audrey. Charm, comedic timing, and a presence that made a space come alive. Audrey risked it. After trying out for the musical Top Banana, she was cast with Phil Silvers in a pivotal part. Everything altered as a result. It debuted at the Winter Garden Theater on November 1, 1951, and lasted until October 4, 1952. 350 performances total. She portrayed Betty Dillon, a part that required precise timing and unwavering intensity, next to Phil Silvers every single night. The performance went quickly and made fun of the mayhem that goes on behind television. She had to deliver punchlines, dance, and sing with flawless accuracy. It wasn't simple working with a big like Silvers. He was noisy, erratic, and always moving. Audrey, however, kept up. She became aware of when to keep silent and when to join in on the jokes. Later, she referred to it as her comedy boot camp. She adapted to his improvisations and kept up with him night after night. She became more confident as a result of that strain. It taught her to maintain her composure in the face of excessive speed. She had proof at the conclusion of the run, which is something that few young actresses ever have. Evidence that she could compete for attention. Evidence that she was capable of handling any challenge presented by live theater. She began appearing on The Bob and Ray Show on NBC in 1951. Even though the show only lasted 15 minutes at a time, it was jam-packed with outrageous parodies, ridiculous sketches, and phony news. It was fast-paced, hectic, and unplanned, all of which were ideal for her. Audrey was more than a singer. She portrayed characters. She was a soap opera star once. The next, she was wearing a straight face while giving a phony weather report. There was not much time spent on rehearsal. The tempo was vicious. She flourished despite the lack of a safety net. She gained the ability to quickly switch jobs and to persevere in the face of adversity. She got known for her rapid thinking. Jackie Gleason became interested in her around this period. To play the stern, no-nonsense Alice Cramden, he initially believed she was too polished and gorgeous. However, he was persuaded to change his mind by her poise, timing, and ability to maintain order despite the turmoil. She was given an opportunity by this small comedy show. She took hold of it and held on to it. However, nothing was simple. Audrey was simply another young woman attempting to succeed in New York long before Broadway lights and television cameras. The Rehearsal Club, a small brownstone on West 53rd Street, was her residence. Funding was provided by John D. Rockefeller Jr. A restroom and a closet that were crammed to the ceiling were shared by dozens of women living in cramped quarters, 5 to a room. Meals were included in the $40 weekly rent. There was no privacy. Not even fame did. The same dream was being pursued by all. A few of her roommates would become famous people: Ginger Rogers, Katharine Hepburn, and Lucille Ball. Some disappeared into the city, never again heard from. Audrey managed to make ends meet by taking up odd jobs. The club occasionally staged performances to draw in agents. She occasionally dressed in borrowed clothing to fit the role. Tears, laughter, and countless rejections were all present. However, she discovered the grit she would require later in that packed brownstone. The guts to press on, the fortitude to smile despite being punched. Audrey Meadows didn't even have a chance to speak when she originally arrived for her audition with the Honeymooners. After glancing at her, Jackie Gleason shot her down. He claimed that she was too attractive, too polished, and too fashionable to portray Alice Cramden. Alice wasn't, in his opinion, elegant. She had a sharp edge, was worn out, and was rough. Meadows was not a good fit. He noticed a woman who appeared to belong in a cocktail club rather than a small Brooklyn kitchen. Meadows has years of experience already. She was confident and had TV roles and Broadway credits. However, none of that mattered at the time. Gleason was unable to see past her appearance. He clearly pictured Alice as a life-hardened lady who lacked the charisma of a movie star. She almost lost one of television's most recognizable roles as a result of that rash decision. Audrey didn't cry about it, though. She went to work. She took off everything that gave her a polished appearance the following morning. She threw on an old dress, washed off her makeup, pulled her hair back, and posed for a picture that would forever alter her career. It appeared as though she had not grinned in a long time. She sent the photo to Gleason via mail. He was unaware that it was the same woman he had turned down when he first saw it. "That's Alice," he yelled, slamming his hand down. She had the part in an instant. The reason the position had become available in the first place was something that was not discussed at the time. Contrary to what CBS said, Hurt Telton, the original Alice did not depart due to illness. She was placed on a blacklist. Her spouse had participated in a parade on May Day. That was sufficient to destroy both of their careers in the midst of the Red Scares panic. Even though Kelton had never cast a ballot, it just took guilt by association. The credits did not include her name. And Audrey Meadows assumed a position characterized by tacit censorship and political fear. Casting was just the first step. Meadows had to start again from scratch. Her actual personality was completely out of character for the role. She lacked street smarts. She was poised and graceful. She then began anew. On the street, she saw people. She altered her speech pattern. Even the way she held herself changed. To become someone Jackie Gleason would trust, she schooled herself. The woman who had entered weeks earlier was nowhere to be seen when she eventually made it onto the set. She changed into Alice Cramden, and the change was so total that nobody ever questioned it again. However, entering the spotlight meant entering Gleason's world, and second chances were not tolerated there. Jackie Gleason wouldn't practice. No second takes were made, no second chances. You only have one chance. In front of 50 million people live. Meadows, fresh from the theater, was appalled. Weeks of preparation were what she anticipated. Rather, she had a single read-through at a table, followed by pressure, lights, and a camera. A phony steak once flew into the audience from the plate. She needed to recover quickly in order to preserve the scene. No safety net was in place. show. Gleason thought that anarchy, not practice, was the source of true comedy. Additionally, he didn't yell when things went wrong. You were frozen out by him. Gleason would avoid talking to you if you made a mistake or irritated him. Not for a few hours or days. He would simply become icy. And the whole room fell silent as Gleason did. No one dared to speak, and the set would go silent. A psychological freeze-out occurred. According to Meadows, the quiet was worse than any shouting. You had no idea what would cause it to cease or when it would. You simply continued to work and hoped it would go away. Gleason ruled the place like a monarch. He had to approve of everything. Camera angles, lines, and scripts. Without his word, nothing changed. No line might be changed by writers. Actors were unable to move. Despite her talent, Meadows had to get permission before making any suggestions. To escape his wrath, they practiced in secret in her dressing room. In an effort to avoid upsetting him, everyone was treading carefully. And that was how he loved it. It was a gamble every day. Everything depended on Gleason's attitude. He was hilarious and kind one day. The next, he was either explosive or mute. You had no idea which version of him would appear. Meadows had to tread carefully, striking a balance between charm and deference. She had to maintain the audience's laughter without ever surpassing Gleason. Real-life conflict was the source of their on-screen chemistry. Every episode of The Honeymooners concluded with a heartwarming statement from Jackie Gleason. "Phew. Baby, you're the greatest," he would remark to his TV wife, Alice. After that, bend in to kiss him. It seems authentic. It was authentic. It was authentic. However, it wasn't. The actress who played Alice, Audrey Meadows, later came clean. Jackie never gave her a kiss. Not one of those kisses was genuine. Innate. He would bend in close, tilt his head, and plant a kiss on her cheek. The rest was done by the camera. Everyone was duped, including her own relatives. The precise framing of the photos was what made the illusion so effective. Jackie would encircle Audrey with his arms so that the vision was obscured. He would make the perfect facial movements. Although their lips never touched, the camera captured the angle that gave the impression that they did. Television was subject to stringent regulations in the 1950s when the show was filmed. Although kissing was delicate, this went beyond simple regulations. Respect was another factor. Audrey and Jackie were experts. They never strayed from their personal bounds, hit their targets, and followed the script. One time, Audrey related a tale about her aunt, Christine. "Oh, darling, I think Mr. Gleason has a little crush on you when he kisses you like that," her aunt commented after watching an episode. Audrey had to deliver the news with a smile. She claimed that he doesn't actually kiss her. That's just how it appears. Nobody in Hollywood was considering reruns in the early 1950s. The television was still relatively new. Nobody had considered the possibility that classic shows would generate revenue once more. Audrey Meadows, however, possessed a secret weapon. Edward, her brother, wasn't in the entertainment industry. He practiced law. Additionally, Edward did something that no one else had considered doing when Audrey was cast as Alice Cramden on The Honeymooners. He amended her contract by adding a line. According to that phrase, Audrey would be compensated if the show ever aired again. Nobody else on the cast had anything like that at the time, not even the show's star Jackie Gleason. Everyone else received nothing when reruns of the original 39 episodes began running. Audrey continued to get her salary. These reruns repeatedly appeared on American television, cable, and even foreign television over the years. And each time a new check came in, it was more than a few dollars. It became millions. Audrey's weekly income whilst filming the episode was around $2,000. In the 1950s, that was good money, but it was nothing in comparison to what was to follow. People in the industry began to communicate in the 1980s. They calculated that reruns had brought in more money for her than any other aspect of her career. Furthermore, the payments continued. She was still receiving checks in the 1990s. Other actors from the program weren't as fortunate because of that one clever sentence her brother included. Trixie, played by Joyce Randolph, was left out. Her contract did not provide residuals. She didn't receive a cut of the show's millions of dollars in syndication revenue. She began to receive meager compensation years later when old variety show episodes were unearthed and shown. However, the majority of the money had already been earned at that point. Joyce discussed it candidly. She lamented the lack of superior representation. Her tale turned into a silent cautionary tale for actresses worldwide. You risk losing out forever if you don't take precautions early. However, Audrey relied on more than one fortunate contract. Her mind was keen. During a period when women were not expected to be businesswomen, she was one. For 11 years, she was a director of the First National Bank of Denver. She became the first woman to occupy that role in history. She did more than just go to meetings. She influenced choices. This was unheard of in the 1960s and 1970s, and it wasn't just that. Audrey became an advisory director at Continental Airlines as well. She made things happen rather than merely sitting on a board. She contributed to the creation of flight attendant outfits. She helped design the airline's lounges and even contributed to the interior design of their aircraft. Her suggestions aided the airline's expansion. She was the reason why big stars in Hollywood flew Continental. Sales increased by 20% after the company relocated its headquarters to Los Angeles. Audrey was more than simply a TV character. Behind the scenes, she was a powerful force. There was upheaval in her personal life. In 1956, she got married for the first time to real estate entrepreneur Randolph Rouse. The ceremony was conducted by her father, a pastor. The union ended in divorce. They got divorced 2 years later. Rouse subsequently claimed that although marriage was enjoyable, there was pressure to be married to a growing celebrity. Being referred to as Mr. Audrey Meadows bothered him. The president of Continental Airlines, Robert F6, followed. They remained together until his passing in 1986 after getting married in 1961. It was a distinct form of union. In order to finance his career, Audrey took a break from acting. She settled into his business life on a daily basis. They resided in Denver, New York, and Beverly Hills. It was a real collaboration. Despite the fact that she was childless, both marriages revealed two very different lives. One is characterized by balance and the other by friction. Audrey maintained her wits even in her personal life. She telegrammed Jackie Gleason on the day of her 1956 wedding. It said, "Dear Ralph, I'm so sorry, but today I'm turning into a bigamist. Randy Rouse's marriage, Alice Love." It was the ideal homage to their marriage on TV. Despite everything, she remained close to Gleason for years, although the laughter was accompanied with pain. Audrey never discussed her experience working with Gleason in public for decades. She gave the cameras a smile. In interviews, she thanked him, but on the inside it was painful. Despite his brilliance, Gleason could be challenging and nasty. Audrey silently bore the burden. She didn't start talking freely until she was in her 70s. She expressed her truth in interviews and letters. She didn't harbor resentment. She was honest. Gleason was brilliant. In addition, he was a bully. She didn't say anything for 30 years. She prioritized the history of the show over her personal comfort. She didn't want to destroy the Honeymooners' enchantment. She wanted no drama. But at last she had to say something. And when she did, her story took on a new dimension. Later, she compared working with Gleason to balancing on a tightrope. He was charming at one point. The next, he was aloof and chilly. He lost his temper suddenly. One incorrect word. The entire set stopped at the first glance he didn't like. People avoided him at all costs. Before every take, Meadows had to guess his emotions. At times, he gave her no attention at all. On other occasions, he chastised her in front of the workers, but she remained steadfast. She gave the part of Alice crammed in her, all while being composed and smart. Gaining that strength wasn't simple. She was exhausted. She never broke despite the pressure, the fear of being replaced, and the silence she had to bear. Despite bearing the brunt of it all, she became a part of television history. She refrained from seeking retribution when she eventually talked about those years. She didn't make a show of it or offend him. She spoke honestly and without resentment. He was brilliant, she said. He made things difficult, she added. Her candor was not intended to undermine him. It was intended to reveal the true cost of the job. Even as she described the commotion, she maintained her composure. According to friends, she hardly ever disparaged him, not even in private. She was careful with her word choice. Her tale was strong because of this. She didn't yell it out. She just let it out. She just let it out. No loud allegation could match the weight of her calm truth. She remained silent for decades. Actresses were not expected to speak out in those days. They had to maintain their composure, smile, and safeguard the show's reputation. The Honeymooners had to look flawless for the network. She was aware that if she protested, the studio may dismiss her and the public might turn against her. So she put up with it. For the sake of everyone watching at home as well as herself, she maintained order. Jackie Gleason was dying in June 1987. He was surrounded by silence. His voice was all but gone and his body was weakening. Silence. The phone then rang, though. On the other end was Audrey Meadows. Even though she hadn't collaborated with Gleason for years, their relationship remained strong. Marilyn Gleason's wife answered the phone before she could talk to him. "Jackie, it's Audrey," she murmured as she approached him and carefully brought the phone to his ear. "It's Alice, yours. It was all about that name, Alice. It revived the laughs and the old set." The old set. The Honeymooners were glowing in black and white. It brought back memories of their former selves. Audrey didn't think twice. What she came to say, she spoke. "I just called to let you know how much I adore you, Jackie." Despite her voice cracking, she continued. She expressed her gratitude to him for casting her as Alice, for believing in her, and for providing her with the part that transformed her life. By that point, Jackie Gleason was hardly able to speak, but what followed broke the stillness. "I was aware of my actions." His voice was distinct, loud, and powerful. America's living rooms had been filled with that thunderous tone. Now it overcame his frailty to go to her one final time. Meadows would always remember it. "It was as obvious as a bell," she said. That one sentence was more than just a recollection. It was a farewell present. He wasn't merely giving her praise. Even in the end, he was assuring her that she had been important. Gleason died a few days later on June 24, 1987. Meadows was still haunted by that last call, but she was taken aback by what transpired next. There was a request from someone. At his burial, they wanted her to speak as Alice rather than Audrey. She was shocked in character. She said, "I told them that I would not fly to the moon any more than I would enter the kitchen as Alice." A homily? "I think that is the worst thing I have ever heard in my entire life." She refused flatly. To her, Ralph Cramden wasn't dead. He never would be. He belonged to television history, now frozen in time. Audrey chose to attend the funeral quietly, without attention or a performance. That was how she honored Jackie, by protecting the magic they had created together. Years later, she faced her own battle. In 1995, Audrey Meadows was diagnosed with lung cancer, but she didn't tell anyone, not even her sister Jane. She kept the illness hidden, locked away from the public. In January 1996, she was admitted to Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. Just days before her death, the news broke. But by then, the fight was already ending. At 8:50 p.m. on February 3, 1996, she passed away. She was 5 days short of her 74th birthday. Jane later said her sister faced it all with quiet courage. No cameras, no headlines, just dignity. Audrey wanted people to remember her as the woman who brought joy into their homes, not as someone wasting away in a hospital bed. That was the image she left behind. Strong, graceful, unforgettable, but she had one last thing to share before she was gone. In 1994, 2 years before her death, she wrote a memoir called Love, Alice, My Life as a Honeymooner. It wasn't just a book, it was her way of holding on to the truth. The pages told stories from the set, not just the fun moments, but the chaos, the pressure, the brilliance, and the heartbreak. Gleason was a genius, but he was unpredictable. The show was a whirlwind, but in the middle of it all, the cast had a bond that couldn't be broken. She wrote about Art Carney, about Joyce Randolph, about the wild rhythm of live television in the 1950s. She opened up about what it felt like to stand in that kitchen set while millions watched. That book became her voice long after the lights had dimmed. It still speaks today. Audrey Meadows never wanted applause for her pain. She never sought sympathy. She left behind something better, a legacy of honesty, laughter, and deep, lasting friendship. And in that final moment with Jackie, when he said, "Knew what I was doing," she got her closure. It was simple, powerful, and permanent.